I raised the level.
Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the Rebel Pastor YouTube channel. Pastor Sky over here, and yes, I'm still in Malaysia at this moment, and I'm probably going to be saying this for a while too. But yeah, I'm in Malaysia. I'm enjoying my time here. I guess I'm what you call a digital nomad. But very grateful, thankful, all of you guys joining us here on this live stream, this YouTube premiere. Thank you for everyone who's in the chat rooms and chatting and joining in on the little conversations that go on during the entire podcast. Anyways, just remember this: if you like this content, if it's something that you really enjoy, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. At the moment, we have 49% of you who 49% of you who watch are unsubscribed. So there's almost half of you out there. Just go ahead, click that subscribe button, hit all the notifications, make sure you know whenever we have new content coming out. And we have new content every single day. So make sure you hit that not just a subscribe, like this video, and on top of it, hit the all notifications, then you'll be notified whenever we have new videos that come out. Now, the one thing that you can do that's going to help this channel for sure 100% is make sure you click that share button. Share this with your friends and family, anyone you know who will benefit from the content that I talk about here every single week. So go ahead, hit that share button. I'd love to see more new people join this channel too. Okay? So what is our goal, guys? By the end of 2024, we are going to be reaching 10,000 subscribers. I'm really hoping that we can hit it even before the end of 2024, but let's see what happens. We're already at 5,500 subscribers. Let's go. Let's move it forward each and every week so that we can move to 10,000 subscribers, okay? So, how has your week been? It has been a very hectic week for me. So, the day that I'm recording this is the day after my friends from America, they came to visit me, and they came for about a week, and it was a crazy trip. Like, lots of great things happened. We visited so many sites here in Malaysia. They do want to come back again. They love it here. However, there was some amazingly crazy things that happened. And let me tell you a couple of things, okay? So the schedule was packed, but what made it even more packed is from the first day, from the moment they arrived from the airport, it takes about less than an hour to get to the Airbnb. It took them 5 hours. So you can't imagine what happened just to get to that point. Going to the car rental, going to the wrong terminal, finally getting the car. Then just so many things happened. Took 5 hours to get there. So that in itself was an ordeal in itself. Okay. The next day, flat tire. There's a nail in the tire. We had to go get it fixed at a shop. And then later on in that day, we went to do some sightseeing, and one of my friends actually broke her foot. Right? She broke her foot here in Malaysia. So it's like, what's happening here? The next day, go to the hospital, get an x-ray. She has a boot on, everything else. And we felt really bad because her foot is hurting so much, she just stayed home the next day. But of course, on the day after, we were able to get her a wheelchair. So instead of her just staying at home, we're kind of pushing her around all over, like downtown, going to shopping malls and stuff. So she was really able to enjoy her time there also. And for me, because I am the host, whenever you host, it's stressful. You're always thinking about, are they having a good time? Is this the right place? And I'm going to tell you, I made some mistakes too. I've probably traveled more in Malaysia than most Malaysians do. And even then, I was sending the wrong directions. Or while I was driving, talking to my friends, I miss a turn or I miss something here. We add on an extra 20 minutes, or we end up going to a completely wrong spot. So yes, crazy 6 days, But I really enjoyed it. Now let me tell you something that I kind of really I realized from these 6-7 days that I spent with my friends. And there were plenty of reasons to be frustrated, plenty of reasons to be angry, plenty of reasons why we could have been what is going on? And there were so many times that we probably could have blamed God or complained to God. But what I really loved about this trip is You know when you're with a bunch of friends that are that you're in a group where you love them and everyone loves you. Well, I think, right? But it's kind of that loving group. And these are people like especially these 2 3 sisters I've known in church for like 25 plus years. I've known them for a really long time. They all have families now and they brought their children and stuff too on this trip. And we're all from the same church. I've been, and we've we're all in our, we're in our late 40s to 50s, right? And we've been through a lot of stuff in life. We've been through major ups and downs. And the one thing that was really refreshing was because we've all been experienced. It's like, experience is another word for being old, right? So because we're experienced, we've been through so many difficulties in life. It's like when it happens, we're like, oh, well, let's just move forward. Oh, well, yeah, I'll just, and even my friend, she's just like, yeah, I'll stay home today. And we're like, what? You okay? Yeah, no problem. Go ahead and have fun. It was so relaxed and calming. There wasn't any of this freaking out. And it made it such a comfortable trip amidst so much difficulty and tribulation. Basically, that's what it was. And it's just like we move on, figure out a way. We can't really change what happened here, so let's just kind of move forward. There's no fuss, no massive disappointment. We even ended up going to all the places we wanted to go, even though we had someone in a wheelchair. And I would say, from talking to all the people that went and all my friends, like people were happy. Like people were just happy. They were so happy, like I said before, all of them want to come back to Malaysia again. Like that's how much they enjoyed their time here. And of course, its big part is due to a wonderful host. Yeah, they had the best host, the host of the hostess, right? But they all want to come back again. Some of them, my friends, went to other parts of Asia to visit. Other people went home and stuff like that too. But uh, this I would say this is kind of one of the reasons. Like when I think about me and my friends, where we've all been through so many things in life, I would say this is one of the reasons why you shouldn't be making life too easy for children. Like that's from everything I just saw. To be able to handle this properly, I would say don't make life too easy or comfortable for kids. And I think that's something that we're doing a lot right now is we're like, "Oh, the kids are sensitive. Oh, let's make sure they don't get hurt. Let's have a participation trophy for every kid because everyone should win." And I would say no. I would say kids need to learn suffering at their level. They need to learn a little bit of suffering. It's okay to lose. They need to learn it's okay to lose. We experience suffering, we learn from the suffering, we grow from the suffering, and we understand that it's something that's a part of life. It's a normal part of life, and if we don't go through those emotions of losing and winning, what's going to happen is we're going to end up having this generation of very weak people, and they're going to be affected by every single thing that comes their way. They're like just basically put in a bubble, right? And I would say, from my personal opinion, I can't stand how society tries to protect children from even the smallest sufferings. Like, and for me, it doesn't make any sense, right? This is where children learn the most. And I wouldn't even say just children, just humans in general, we learn from our sufferings. We learn from what we suffer, right? It's okay to lose. Let children lose. I'm serious. Let them lose. Let them feel what loss is so that they can make themselves better so that they can win the next time. Let them lose, right? Let them feel the anguish of not winning. Let them feel the anguish and the drive and desire to want to win also. I think that's something that's really important for us to have that drive, right? The wanting to be better instead of like making everyone feel like, oh, it's okay. You don't have to win. And I would say, no, this is what we learn in life. There's always winners and losers. And if they think that everyone's supposed to win all the time, they're in for a huge shock when they go into the real world. If you don't let them lose, they grow up to be total losers in life. I'm going to tell you that. They're going to be total losers in life. And just, you know, I I think if they think that they should always win, I think that's a major problem. And it brings up a generation of spoiled kids. And that's why I say, think about what Christ teaches us, what God teaches us through the Bible. the point of suffering, when you look at the Bible, how much suffering, there's so much suffering, and sometimes there is injustice. They don't even deserve the suffering, and they're still going through it. Look at the stories. There's Job, look at Joseph, look at Jesus. They're all going through massive suffering. And the real point that I see throughout the scriptures is not about whether someone receives suffering or not. The key point is whether you go through blessings or suffering, are you still going to go through it together with God? Are you going to stick with God or not? This is like what I call a true relationship, true loyalty, true discipline, where you're learning how to really stick with God through thick and thin. And I think one of the things that we do need to teach our children is when we come to Christ, when you have faith in God, this faith, like marriage, is through thick and thin. It doesn't matter if you're struggling. You don't leave your husband or wife because you're struggling and you're mad at them for something. And kids got to learn this at an early age. And as people of faith, we got to teach our kids that, hey, yeah, we're struggling. I know we're struggling. I know you just lost, but pray. Take it with God. Be with God. We're learning how to have true faith. And I think that's important for all of us here is learning to believe properly in God. And it requires us to go through the suffering, just like all the major figures in the Bible. And I would say that with our children, as we raise them, we want to make sure that not only do they have faith, but they have that strong faith that through all the suffering and difficulty, no matter what, we still hang on to God, right? And that reminds me of a verse. And this is the first verse I want to talk about today is from Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2. And it says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. And this is something we have to recognize is God is going to be there with you through all the difficulties because God has that love. That love is already there. And He says, I'm going to stick with you no matter what because I'm going to show you what true love really is. The real matter is whether you will have that true love towards God, that when it gets that difficult, you will stick to God just like God says, yeah, you know, when you pass through the waters, I'm going to still be with you. That rivers, they're not going to sweep you away. The fire is not going to burn you. I'm going to be with you. And the real question is, will you be together with God? And that's why when we go through suffering in life, it's okay. Let Him go through it. We got to go through it. But the key matter is going to be, do you stick to God even in the most difficult times? Right? So, that's something that I hope that a lot of people can resonate with, and it's something that we'll be able to understand and realize even more deeply too. And right in the chat room, we've all been through difficulties. Right in the chat room right now, right now you're in that chat room, or you can comment below if you're watching this not live. Just comment below. See what What about you guys? What was the most difficult thing that you've been through? What's that thing that you went through, but you still stuck through God, and that's like one of those proud moments. Like, yeah, I still have that type of faith. And I hope it's something that we can testify about, and we can in the future be able to show people that, yeah, and I was blessed for doing this too, right? Tons of stories that I have also, but before this stories, I'll leave that for the next podcast. But today, I really want to talk to you about this story. It's a story in the Old Testament time. It's one of my favorite stories, and it's about this general. It's commander. It's not even a Jew, not from Israel. Just a regular, not a regular. He's a commander. His name is Naaman, and there's this amazing story in Second Kings chapter 5 that I do believe that a lot of us can learn from. And I hope it's something that when we go over this story today, I want you guys to think of yourself and put yourself into the position of Naaman, and just to see what would you do in that situation. All right. So before we get into the actual story itself, let me just do something that I normally do. I didn't, in episode 14, I think I didn't do it, but I'm back to my old ways. Give me one second. Okay. All right. So, woo. I think I blew my nose too hard because I'm starting to see stars. These stars everywhere. I blew a little bit too hard. Okay, so now that I got that out of my way, let's get into the story from Second Kings chapter 5, and this is a story of Naaman. Okay, Naaman, and he was the commander of the armies of Aram. Okay, so here it is. This is a great story. Second Kings chapter 5. We're not going to go through. We're not going to read every single verse, but let me give you a summary of what the story is about. Okay, so in the story, once again, great commander of an army. His name was Naaman, well respected, loved by his king and everyone around him. But he had this one dark secret that he didn't want anyone to know. And he actually had leprosy, right? So this is something, especially back in the times of the Old Testament, people were shunned. People were considered unclean for having leprosy. And this is something that he wanted to hide. He was ashamed of it, right? So when you start looking at verse 2, you're going to look at verse 2 and it says, like, there was one day, there's a servant girl from Israel. So the young girl from Israel is now servant of Naaman's wife. And she, because she's living with the wife, she's the wife's servant, she actually gets to see that dark secret. And she sees, oh, here is Naaman bathing. Ah, he has leprosy. And this young servant girl can probably see Naaman worrying about it, talking about it with his wife and such. And probably Naaman's wife probably talks about it openly to the servant girl too. Now, the servant girl says something interesting and says, hey, if you only knew that there was a man of God, there is a prophet in Israel, and this guy can heal you of that leprosy. So Naaman hears about this news, gets really excited, says, all right, okay, I got to do this. This is the person that's healed leprosy before. I got to go to this person. So he bravely, courageously goes and tells the king. And he's like, King, kind of ashamed of this. I got to let you know, I got leprosy. I know it's really shocking, but there's a servant girl from Israel, and she said that there's a guy there that can heal me of leprosy. Can you please let me go? Now, this is something that's very courageous. Why? Because dark secrets aren't things you tell people. This dark secret, he held it from his king, but now that he has his chance to be healed, he goes to the king, courageously says, I got leprosy. Now, what does the king do? King is like, dude, no problem. I'll even write a letter for you to the king telling him, look, I send my servant Naaman, and he's going to get healed of his leprosy over in Israel, right? So here's the king who even signs off on it and even does extra for Naaman there. So what happens next? So Naaman goes to Israel. And of course, the letter is given to the king of Israel. And the king of Israel is like, oh no, what's going on here? I can't heal this guy. Maybe they're trying to pick a fight. Maybe they want me to try, and then he can't get healed, and then we're going to go to war because of this. And the king of Israel is so distraught. What does he do? He tears his robes. Now, one of the things you need to know in the Bible is whenever someone tears their robe, it is the ultimate expression of their agony. He tears his robes like, oh, what am I going to, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. He tears his robes. Now, there was a prophet, his name was Elisha. And Elisha hears about the king tearing his robes, and he says, okay, probably he's like eating an apple. He's like, what? Why tear your robes? Send him over to me. I'll heal him. Not a problem, right? So the king is like, oh, thank God. And he sends Naaman to the prophet. Now, Naaman, what's he doing? Right? Naaman has this dark secret. He's here to get healed of his leprosy, and he's riding over to Elisha's house. He gets off his horse, and he's like, oh, this is it. The man of God will come to see me. I wonder what he's going to do to heal me. And he gets to the door, and Naaman knocks. And he waits for the prophet to open. Now, verse 10, what happens? The door opens. Elisha sent a messenger to say to him. So it's not even Elisha himself. Hey, go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and your flesh will be restored, and you'll be cleansed. And he closes the door. And Naaman's like, what? And he's like, that was the cure? What the heck? So Naaman, what was his reaction? You look at verse 11. In verse 11, Naaman says, Naaman went away angry and said, I thought he would surely come out to me, stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. And then later he starts to complain even more. It's like, and the Jordan River's dirty. There's better rivers over there. Why would he make me like go even to the Jordan River? Finally, as Naaman is walking away in anger, his servant comes to him and brings him back to his senses and says, hey, he's like, in verse 13, Naaman's servant comes to Naaman and says, my father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? Finally, Naaman comes to his senses and he goes, okay, fine. And he goes to the river, washes himself 7 times, and he's healed. He's healed and it's done. And now Naaman becomes a worshiper of God. So here's the thing. Great story, right? When you hear the story, wow, miracle of God, this is amazing, this is awesome. And if I say to you guys right now is, why is this story so deep and profound? Because the question is, well, none of us have leprosy, right? None of us have this thing where people are going to be like so like shunning you and saying, oh, unclean person who has leprosy. What does this have to do with our life? And the first thing I want to tell you guys is this. Like, when you look at these stories in the Bible, why are these stories so important? Why does God want to share these stories with us? And if you think about it, how many times have you gone to church and you hear a testimony? And when you hear that testimony, it strikes your heart like, oh, that's so true. And it gives you hope. Or it makes you feel that God is even better. And it's so relatable. And you say to yourself, ah, I'm in a very similar position as this. You know what? I can do the same thing. I got to trust more in God. When you hear these stories, even in the Bible, even if they're 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, these stories are relatable and they help us to understand our relationship with God and what we should be doing in our life, right? They're so relatable. And you're like, well, how does this story of leprosy become relatable to us? Well, let's get deeper into this story. Now, Naaman, he's the commander of the army of the king of Aram. All right? Great man, respected, loved by all. And I would say this too. When you look at yourselves in your life right now, are you commanders? And the answer is no, you're not, but you are. How are you commander? You are the commander of your own life. You're the one commanding your own life. You are the one that chooses to go here or there. You're the one that is kind of presenting yourself in front of your people. And what happens is when you look at your family and friends around you, don't you want to be loved and respected? And it's true. This is why we always show our best selves to others. We rarely show the weakness unless it's someone really, really close to us. We are, in essence, commanders of our own lives, just like Naaman was. And I would say something that's very interesting is when you look at the culture we're living in now today, when you have social media, Instagram, TikTok, and all these other different social media apps, everyone is actually trying to become more loved. They want to be liked. They want the likes. They want people to like them. They want people to look at them and say, wow, this person's living a great life, where you may not even be living the greatest life, but on Instagram and TikTok, you're only showing the greatest parts of your life. We're commanders of our own social medias to what people see the life that we're living right now. Now, here's the thing. What makes Naaman so relatable to us? He's got a dark secret. He's got something that he's so ashamed of. He's got something that he doesn't want anyone else to know. And tell me this, guys. How many times have you ever heard someone testify about you, about how great or how good you are? But you know deep inside, you have some things that are not good. You know your life. And there's things that you're ashamed of. And there's things I am 100% certain that you don't want the public to know about you. You just don't want them to know. And we hide these secrets. We hide these things from all the people around us, right? Right now, you can think about all the things you're embarrassed about your life right now. the dark secrets that no one else knows, that you only want to keep to yourself, and it's shameful. But the one thing is, even though we have these dark secrets, us too, we're trying to get rid of it. We're trying to find a way to get rid of it. We're trying to find a way to stop that bad habit. We're trying to find a way to stop doing those things that are hurting the people around us, but it's really hard. Is there a way? When I was younger and growing up, one of the things I was so self conscious about was my skin. In high school, you hit puberty, and then all of a sudden you start getting pimples and stuff like that. And I was so self conscious about it that by myself in secret, I would be searching on different medicines and ointments and things to get these pimples away from my face. I had some, not severe, but it was bad. It wasn't very good acne, right? And before, when I was younger, people would always compliment me how my skin was so nice. But then in high school, hitting puberty, it was so bad. And secretly, I'd be searching and researching, and I'd be buying things, without my parents knowing, because it was something that I was so ashamed of. And what happens is, we get to a point where we've tried everything and we almost gave up. And there's this young servant girl, someone who isn't really big. How do you know how desperate Naaman is? Naaman is so desperate, he's listening to a servant girl. He's actually listening to a servant girl and says, there's someone who can heal you of leprosy. He's done it before. And he's willing to risk even telling the king. And this is kind of what life is like for us too. There are things we want to get rid of, right? There are people in life, we're going through some really hard times. We're going through the meaninglessness of life. We're going through the things that feel like, why am I even doing this? And we're looking for a solution. Why, what's the purpose of living? But when someone tells you, even though there's someone you might not even have like highly respect, because you're so desperate, you're like, okay, well, who is this person? Tell me about this person here. Naaman goes to the king. And he tells someone about it and says, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. And, it takes a lot of courage to tell someone because, you're so ashamed of it. You kind of think to yourself that sometimes people are going to judge you or they're going to shame you because of what you're struggling with. And what usually happens is you're telling someone who's really close to you. And what are they going to do? They're going to be people who are going to support you more than anything else. They're going to support you. And it's really shocking. Like, what? And the king's like, yeah, I'll even write a letter for you. Don't worry. I got you covered. And it makes you realize that sometimes telling someone, especially someone you trust or someone you love and they love you, is not a bad thing. You can tell people. You can get help from people too. And it's kind of one of the things that happens in life is we do struggle with it until it's, a lot of times we go through and we struggle with it until we've reached the point of desperation. So the king helps Naaman. And when Naaman arrives, the king directs him over to this mystical prophet, right? The healer, the powerful man of God. Naaman is excited. He says, okay, go over to his house. And Naaman's like, this is it. I'm going to be healed. This is going to be amazing. Healing his leprosy is going to be the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. I can't wait to see what happens. And I'm sure Naaman's thinking to himself, when I meet this prophet, I am going to feel the presence of God and it's just going to be so amazing. Now, with this anticipation and expectation, he prepares his heart for healing, stops at the door and knocks on it. But when the person opens the door, it's not even Elisha, it's his servant. It's, what? You don't even have enough time to see me, the great commander of the armies of Aram? And he gets angry and walks away without doing it. Now, here's the thing. One of the biggest things that kind of kills us in faith is when we have these expectations of God, how God is supposed to do something. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are many times, even when you read the Bible, your expectation of how God does things is like, oh my gosh, well, God's got to do it like this. Oh, God's got to heal me like this. God's got to do it like, oh, well. And here is Naaman, and what's his thoughts? Well, I thought the man of God would wave his hand over the spot, say some shabalaba, habalaba, and say all these crazy things, and all of a sudden, and you'd be like, oh, I'm so healed. This is amazing. Hallelujah. Here's some gifts, whatever it is. But instead, it's something so normal. It's so normal. Right? How normal is it? It's a servant coming like, all right, go wash yourself there and you'll be done. Bye-bye. And a lot of times we're stuck in that expectation of this mystical fireworks and fanfare that God has to do things in that way. Think about this, guys. How many times have you prayed to God and your expectation is, God, I need money. Oh, God, I just bought a lottery ticket. Please, I pray that you'll help me to win this lottery. Oh, God, I need to win this lottery. And you know what? I'll give 50% of it to tithe. You know what I mean? How many times have you prayed that, oh, God, please help me because I have a test and I didn't study? We're looking at God as a lottery ticket. We're looking at God in that way. Pray to God for something really expensive. Just waiting in anticipation for it. That all of a sudden, God's going to drop this job where you make $1 million a year. Like he's just going to drop it right in front of you. The funny thing is our expectations of how God works is so off. Because when you look at your entire life and you see how many times God has worked in your life, it has never been that mystical. It had never been the and fire comes out and everything is resolved. It never works that way. It's very rare things like that actually happen. Have you ever seen that in your life? Most people haven't. Even when you listen to people's testimonies, they're not talking about money falling from the sky. They talk about, I worked really hard and I got a better job. God prepared a job for me. Hallelujah. It wasn't someone just coming to your door. Hello, God told me you needed a job. Here's a job for $1 million a year. It doesn't happen like that. And just like Naaman, we have that same expectation, and we get angry when God doesn't answer it the way that we want. Remember Naaman in verse 11? Oh, for sure, God, you will be healed. That's what he's expecting. You're like, that's so lame. Just a servant tells me to do this? And then think about this. How many times have you done what Naaman did? Naaman's like, first, the prophet doesn't meet his expectation, number one. Number two is he's trying to convince himself that this is bad, but he says, oh, and Jordan River is too dirty. You know, there's so many better rivers than this. You start to think about more and more reasons why you're right. That's how we are. But it's his own servant that kind of brought him to his senses. And I find this very interesting. And I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but every time there was something that good came about, it was always through servants. It wasn't through the original person. It's always through the one that they sent. It was the young Israeli servant girl that told them there was someone who can heal. Then the servant came out, and the servant came out and says, hey, wash yourself 7 times. And then now, after Naaman is angry and walks away, his own servant comes to him and says what? Look, if he told you to climb Mount Everest, find a rare flower that's guarded by a fire-breathing dragon, kill the dragon, grab the rare flower, would you do it? He's like, yeah, because it sounds like it's worthy, right? Now, how much more then can you just go to the river and wash yourself 7 times? And Naaman's like, okay, I got it. All right. And I think one of the things that we can recognize from this story is, look at the way God works. How many times have you seen God himself? How many times have you seen God literally himself? Or has it always been through someone talking to you, you're inspired, and then you're like, wow, you really spoke to my heart? How many times have we actually seen God? No, we're always seeing and hearing God through his servants, through people that are around us. And if you even look at yourself, if you miniaturize everything just to yourself, you know who the servant is? The servant is your conscience. The servant is that poor, wretched servant inside of you. Sometimes it's your spirit that you rarely listen to, but that servant inside of you says, come on, man. Come on. Just try, at least try it. You can't just walk away. You came all the way here. You might as well do it. And what he does is he goes into the river. He dips himself 1 time, no change. 2 times, no change. 3, 4, 5 times, no change. And Naaman's probably thinking, oh, here is that Elisha trying to make a fool of me. Nothing's changed after 5 times. 6 times, nothing changes. But only after the 7th time he washes himself, everything is cleared and clean after the 7th time. Now we know scripturally speaking, 7 is the number of completion. It is the perfect number. It's only after you completely do something, something works or something happens. And symbolically, 7 times he washed. And after the 7th time, this is when he was healed. And I would say to you guys here too is whenever we get these inspirations or when God speaks to us, God is not telling us to do it half-heartedly. You got to do it fully. Only when you do it fully, when you do it completely with all your heart, this is when it starts to work. But you can't do it half-heartedly and do it only 3 or 4 times and then say, look, it doesn't work. Because the question God's going to ask you is, did you do it 7 times? Did you really do it? And if you say, oh, I only did it 3 to 4, then you didn't really do it. See, the message God wants to give to you today is this. The answers to our problems in life, whether it's the emptiness you feel, meaninglessness, difficulties, pains, the answer is already there, right? Just like Naaman went all the way to the prophet, to the man of God, what does the man of God do? He gives you the words of God. We receive the words of God each and every week. We receive the words of God by reading the Bible every day. We're receiving those words of God. And guess what? Sometimes the words are a bit boring. They don't sound spectacular. They don't sound amazing. Sometimes it's painful to read, and sometimes you don't want to do it. It's kind of like the Jordan River. It's not that great. It's just a book. There's other books that are more exciting than the Bible. But if you put those words into practice, if you actually do them, this is when your problems are solved. You know what God says? God says, you want to be rich? You want riches? And we're like, yeah, I want to be rich. And God says, Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and then all these things will be added unto you. There's a way to do it. It's seeking God first. That's hard. That's hard. It's not easy. What? I got to seek God. But how am I going to make money? Seek God first. You want to stop fighting with your enemies? Turn your cheek. What? If they slap you, turn your cheek and get slapped again? Like, what? None of us want to do it. We're not going to do it. And we say, this is your solution? Really? That's your solution? Turn my cheek and get hit again? You know how amazing those words are to turn your cheek? You know what happens in that situation? Imagine you're fighting with someone and they strike you. Do you know what inside their heart they really want you to do back to them? They want you to hit them back. They do, because it makes you even. But if they strike you, you stand up, they strike you again, and then you look up at them and you say, I'm sorry. Do you know how that person feels? They're not going to be like, ah, they're going to be, oh man, I struck this person twice. And then they said sorry. Now they owe you. Fighting stops. That's the power of the words of God. Yes, in the short term, you're going to have a lot of pain. But people don't actually do it. Right? Our solution is, shouldn't I just go learn MMA? Shouldn't I just learn boxing? And then when they come to punch me, I can punch them back. Ah, right? That's what we think. But what happens is you become enemies and you fight for the rest of your life. When God says, love them. Just like Naaman, guys, we get angry, we walk away, and we say, this is stupid. And we don't listen to what God says when he speaks to us through the pulpit, when he speaks to us through the Bible, when he speaks to us through our prayers. You know, the people that God sent, like in the Bible, you'll see the Elishas, the Moseses, the Pauls, and even Jesus. If those guys came to us, would you do it? And the answer is, of course. If Jesus told me to do it, of course I do it. But here's the thing. When Jesus, Paul, when all these great figures in the Bible, what are they essentially doing? They're telling us the words of God, which means if we listen to the words of God, if we read the words of God, and then we say it to someone else, we are actually conveying the words of God. We're not conveying what we think. And what I'm telling you guys is that it's not about exactly who is saying it to you. Because if it's God, it doesn't matter who's the one he's using. When God speaks, God speaks. And if we are to be true believers of God, we need to be the ones that discern, is this a person speaking to me or is this God speaking to me at this time? God speaks through your friends. God speaks through your family. God speaks through strangers. God speaks through your boss. God speaks through events that you see in life itself. Do you really need someone like God to directly come to you so that you'll do something? No. God is clear. We already have the words of God to not just read, but for us to take in and also give benefit to others, right? 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, great verse says, all scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness. The words of God, we can use the words of God. This is how we help each other too. The words of God don't just come from God. God is speaking through the people around us and through our situations and circumstances, right? So, this is why we need to be people who are good with the words of God. We're there to help each other and, allow the Spirit to work through us, allow the Spirit to work through others, and really be able to discern, this is God speaking to me, right? We need to become the mouthpieces of the Lord too. But, if you have expectation that a certain type of person or a certain way that God has to work with you, this is where you miss a lot of the things that God is doing in our life. And even though God gives you the message, you may never receive that message. All right? So yeah, that's why I really, really love this story of Naaman and the healing of his leprosy. And I hope it's something that we can kind of relate to a lot more and think about ourselves in our life and how God is working and how many times we missed God speaking to our hearts too. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is the end of today's podcast. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. A lot of deep things for us to think about, things that we can think about Naaman and who we are in our life, right? Where we are in our life right now, the things that are relatable. And if you have any questions or anything else, put it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you guys too. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is the end of today's podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for all the people who are in the chat room, just typing away, having your conversations. I really, really enjoy reading them now and later on too. And if you have any other questions too, or any other topics you want me to cover, go ahead, put them below. Like I said before, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, hit that subscribe and like button. Would love to see your faces again. Okay? So everyone, enjoy your week again. We'll see you guys again next week. This is the Rebel Pastor Podcast. Pastor Sky signing out over here. See you again next week. Bye-bye.
Call me a rebel, never settle. I raise the level. It's time to go, sky's the limit. It's me against the world. Rebel pastor, ooh.